throw. Point down the seam. Touchdown! Seahawks! Jimmy!
And welcome in, everybody. Bo here, Football Talk. And of course, I am here with my buddy Rob. And of course, this is Hawk Talk. How's it going, man?
Going well. Happy Friday.
You know it.
Right.
Blue Friday. That's why we do it on Fridays, right?
I know. I love it. Got to keep it going.
Absolutely.
No, doing well. Hopefully, we'll see how we're going to get, weather-wise. Today seems okay. Tomorrow, thunderstorms. Be prepared for your outages.
Yeah, it's supposed to rain all weekend. So kind of a bummer way for Father's Day to be here in the Northwest, right? It was nice all week. And then we get some wicked wind, rain and stuff over the weekend. And then, of course, next week it's supposed to be nice again. So the rain shows up just for the weekend, which is super
dumb. Rain on Father's Day parade, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's yeah. Right on. So we got some good questions this week coming in. One of them was, do we think Geno is going to keep his spot, or does Sam Howell beat him out? Which really seems ridiculous to me, but it's been asked a lot, and of course it's new coaching, so anything is entirely possible. That being said, ESPN, Brady Henderson, he was out here. He was at some of these camp practices, and I mean, really, he said Geno's job is safe, is essentially how he broke it down. There's no real quarterback competition. Sam Howell is definitely the number two. I don't know if you've seen any clips from it yet, from OTAs.
No, I haven't.
So,
because I'm a big believer in Sam.
So. Yeah, no, he hasn't looked bad, but you can tell from the clips I've seen, you can tell who the starter is.
Oh yeah.
Right. It's not one of those where there's a real question. Like if you were looking at the Steelers right now.
Oh yeah.
I think there'd be a question, right? Mm-hmm. Because you've seen what Wilson's done over the last couple of years. We really don't know what Fields is. I could see how that coaching staff might feel those players out to see what they are. But Geno's contract is really a deal.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to starting quarterbacks.
Lawrence get, So.
Yeah, man, right? So, yeah, I mean, I really don't think that Sam Howell's going to be that guy. I think the only way he really gets a start this year is if Geno gets hurt.
No, I would agree with you on that. I think Geno's got first shot. He's going to go out there. I have been reading, his comments. He seems to be very, excited about the new offense. I've heard that, I've read that he looks good in it. There's still some learning curve stuff, but, overall, he's got a good grasp. So I will agree with you. I think Geno's going to start. I think his job's pretty much safe, barring an injury. But given an injury and Howell comes in, I think if he can perform like I'm hoping he can, then we might be having a different conversation of, do we want to bring Geno back, or do we give Howell the rest of the season? Either that, or if we're just on a tank, if we're at that point where we're going to tank, then at that point, it might just be like, let's just get Howell in there to get some reps, because at some point he is going to probably take over and we may not be moving forward with Geno. So Geno's just got to keep us on a 9-8, 10-7 kind of pace, and no injury, and he's job safe.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, if you were going to have a 4-win season, then Howell's getting in there because they want to see what he has. Right. Yeah. Or if he gets hurt, that's the real question is, does he get back in? Because that's like any team, if you bring in a backup and he balls out, you stay with the hot hand.
No, you don't want to move from that, because, it's a game of momentum. So if the hot hand's creating that momentum, you don't want to do anything to stop that.
That's exactly it. Yeah. I mean, now if he comes out and he plays okay, then Geno gets his job back when he's healthy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's really a small window of what it is Sam Howell can do to actually win that job. But there is a window. So I wouldn't completely rule it out. But, I mean, Geno does stay relatively healthy, and this offensive line is going to be better.
Yeah, as long as he's not taking sacks and running for his life, he should be
Yeah, I
fine.
mean,
He's
even with
smart
how
to do the
bad the
ball back.
line was last year, even
Yeah.
with how bad it was last year, he didn't take a lot of sacks overall.
Well, he's
He was
smart.
pressured nonstop.
Well, he's smart. He's not like Russ. He gets rid of the ball.
Exactly. Exactly.
He knows, like, okay, I can't do this. I'm gonna get rid of the ball. He's smart enough to do that. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of times he would lose one tackle to run right into another. So, I mean, that was just kind of part of Wilson's charm, I would say.
yeah. What's up,
How's it going,
beautiful
guys?
bearded bastard? I love that name.
Yeah, they have a show. It's I believe it's a trio of them, and
Okay,
yeah, they got some good content. If you haven't seen them, check them out.
I will.
But
I'm always subscribing to everything you throw my way.
right
I
on,
found
right
out
on.
a little like other podcasts, other stuff too. So love
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I,
It's
I
good
will.
community
It's a little bit of a break from what the show is, but I do love the podcasting community on Twitter, X, whatever we're pretending to call it. Specifically, the kind of the football end of it. I know some of the other podcast kind of communities, they can be a little bit weird, but the football community, specifically on Twitter, is actually a very cool spot. You got guys that are coming in from other shows, like Mitch. He has his own network there, and so it's very cool to have them pop in on shows and say hi. And obviously, I try and do that as well when it. Yeah, see, there you go. Online community is fire, and it really is. It really is. It's a very supportive group. It's kind of fun because you can ask questions of each other, like, "Hey, what are you seeing on this show that you like, or something that you think you'd want to change?" And so we all grow together. We all help each other get better. So shout out to all of those guys that chime in from other networks. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. I watch. Plus, any chance and opportunity to get out there in this community and represent the Hawks,
Yeah, of course,
throw my team around. I love.
Well, and they're generally good sports when you're if you're trash talking a little bit to each other. Like there'll be times that I'll get on with Mitch there. A lot of times I would get on one of his shows on Sunday mornings before games, and I think we had like 6 people on that show a lot of times, and all representing different teams. So you'd be throwing barbs at each other a little bit. Although in Mitch's case, he is an Eagles fan, and his team is looking pretty good for this coming year.
Yeah, hard to find too many errors in that in that one over there.
Yeah, especially with that offseason they had, man.
Yeah, I know.
They were smart though. They really did address most of the big holes that they had. So very interested to see how it is they do this year.
But they still lost to the Hawks last year.
They did find a way to. Because we had a backup and everything. Like it was, they found a way to lose a lot of games down the stretch, though.
Yeah.
Yep. Real Fresh Channel, Bodkin Show, all those guys. In fact, I've been on most of those shows. It's great guys, and again, great community. So if you are on Twitter, definitely check these guys out because it's the easiest way to find everybody's networks. And then check out their content. It's fantastic.
Yep.
But so we got Mike McDonald taking an interesting approach when it came to bringing his coaching staff along. And the only reason I say that is almost all of his staff and really almost all of the players are guys he's never worked with.
That is interesting. Usually usually coaches will bring in somebody, at least some familiarity in there who knows them, who knows kind of how they think. But, at this point, maybe that rarity will benefit. Maybe it's having a whole, you could look at it as even like, well, companies will look, you got a whole set of different fresh eyes coming from different perspectives now at this point, maybe somebody who's not so familiar with Rob. And so you'll have more opportunity for feedback and growth in that sense, right? Like, hey, listen, I came from here. This didn't work here. Let me tell you something, let's, so, sometimes you don't want to be filled with a bunch of yes men. You want to be filled with a bunch of, fresh eyes and perspective. So I kind of think it's a good idea that, he's opening himself up to that,
Yeah.
Now how it performs, We don't
you
know.
can kind of see it from both ways, right? So, I mean, like you bring in guys that you know, and the uptake on your program is faster because they're familiar with your work. But at the same time, like you said, if you got guys that are coming from all kinds of different walks of life, so to speak, it does add some balance in the way of outside perspectives as far as what it is you're doing. Now, as a head coach, obviously you got ultimate veto power. You're like, yeah, no, this is what we're doing. It may not have worked for you guys, but it's going to work here. So, I mean, you do have that ability, but it's just unique because generally when a head coach comes in, he's bringing guys that were either on his staff or had extensive work with, and usually they bring in players that they've had during their tenure. And on this team so far, as I recall, there's no players that had played with him before.
No, we missed out
And
on the team.
yeah, because exactly. And then the only coach that he had any real time with was Jay Harbaugh at Michigan for a year. And that was it. I do believe there was some working, not close work, but I guess they did some work together, and that's his assistant coach. But that's it. No one else on the staff has worked with him before, and no one else on the staff has actually done the job that they are currently there to do.
I think that's more interesting,
right?
than having worked with him before. That is more interesting. Like all new, people. It's not even like they're pros in that section, and like you said, they've not actually held that position or specific position of coaching for a long time. So that is more interesting. But do you think though that it in some ways was availability of him being able to even try to get people, maybe he did try. I don't know if he tried and it didn't work out, and that's why he kind of like went with this new approach, or if this was intended the whole time.
So it's entirely possible that some of the guys he may have wanted were no longer available, especially if you think of the coaching carousel, the way it went down this last year. The Hawks were the last ones at the table.
Yeah.
Everyone else already selected their people. So I would imagine that because of that situation, there was just less availability as far as your assistants. So I do think that probably played a role to some degree. But I don't know, just kind of unique how it all came together. Yeah. That it's kind of that movie clip, right? That's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Exactly. We will see. I think it will. I mean, I think it's going to pay off enough for us to be competitive. I don't think, yes. I don't know. I don't want to be, I'm not over confident that we're paid off enough to like get us a Super Bowl, but I think it's competitive. I don't see us being a 7-10 team like a lot of the media wants to say, or 6-11, that kind of situation.
I was going to say 7-10 is actually, when it comes to the media, high. I've seen 5 win. I've seen 7 win. It's just like, man,
there's no faith. Well, but that's when we do well. The Hawks
for sure
always do well when they're an underdog. When you don't believe in them, it's just like with Gino's first year. Yep. They didn't write me, so I wrote them back. In that sense, it's the same thing. Like, you're going to write us off, well, then we're going to prove it. I think that's how Hawks have always even succeeded, is on that.
Sure.
You need to prove it. So maybe being in that boat is actually what's going to help us produce. I'm a firm believer that's a big part of it.
No, I'm with you there. It's certainly through history, the Hawks are better as an underdog, no question. The thing that seems wild to me about them saying it's going to be a 5-win team or even a 7-win team. And don't get me wrong, I don't think they're going to be, killing the league by any means. I think they're a 9-win team, but
a lot of close games.
Yeah, exactly. But why I think it's wild that they're saying, especially the ones that are like 5 wins, is your offense comes back intact, right? You have your 2 running backs that are both studs, right? You have a ton of talent at the receiver position.
Mm-hmm.
You have a very talented tight end. You have 2, Pro Bowl tackles. They were hurt last year. That's why they weren't. But the year before, they come in their rookie year. They're both Pro Bowl. One of them was an All-Pro, as I recall. So then during this offseason, you bring in a center and a guard. You draft a center and a guard. So you're dealing with the interior offensive line that did have some weaknesses, certainly once everybody got hurt. So you're bringing back an offense that Geno Smith set the yardage record for the Seahawks with the year before.
Yeah.
Right. You're bringing the whole cast back.
Yeah.
So then you go to the defensive side, and they've been a bottom 5 defense. They were roughly 27th in the league, I think, last year. You mean to tell me that you bring in all these guys and they're not at least marginally better on the defense?
Like we're not taking any steps forward.
Right? I mean,
that I disagree.
And even with that, they were a 9-win team. So like, what do we, how do we go from 9 wins? We get better at every position on defense. We bring back an offense that it, until people got hurt towards the end of not last year, but the year before, was a top 5 scoring offense. You have all of those people back, and somehow we're going to get 4 games worse.
I know, especially if we're supposed to have like such a weak schedule based on the fact of where we landed last year, right? Like, I think our schedule.
No, we actually don't have a weak schedule though.
But isn't our schedule like most of the teams we played? We're scheduled to play this year. From what I understand, didn't even hit. Weren't like really 500 teams. Too many. We're not getting. They weren't.
We can take a look right at it. So,
I mean, under 500 for Denver, right?
Yeah, but they shouldn't be this year. But yes. The Pats are terrible.
Yeah.
But the Dolphins are good. The Lions are good. Atlanta's going to be good. The Bills will still be good. The Jets, in theory, should be. And then when we play the North, all of those teams are good. So the Giants are garbage, and the Patriots are garbage. And I can't even say that the Cardinals are going to be bad, because they had like 400 picks in this draft.
I know, right? Like,
so, I mean, when you look at this schedule, there really isn't too many teams that you can look at this and just be like, yeah, that's a win. Mm-hmm. I mean, because playing the Broncos week 1, I have it slated as a win, but that's not a slam dunk. I mean, just because we have so many new players, new coaches, I mean, week 1 might be an interesting week. It's probably not going to be super smooth football for the Seahawks. Yeah. So although I think they win that game, it's probably not we got this in the bag.
Yeah, as long as they're not like playing the Rams like they did last year, because that's exactly why we lost that Rams game last year, because they thought they had it in the bag coming out the door. And
well, they also lost half of their offensive line at halftime because both tackles got hurt, and then in the third quarter, I think one of their guards got hurt. So I mean, tough to win a lot of games that way when you're starting 5, 3 of them go down, and we saw with the drop off from tackle from our starters to our backups it was ridiculous. Like, that drop off was enormous. But yeah, I mean, when you look at this schedule, it's not a cakewalk, because Green Bay is solid. The Vikings were a borderline playoff team, and they didn't have an answer at quarterback. Like, they were just cycling guys through. The Bears better be better, right? I mean, they've done a lot this offseason to make the team better. And then, of course, the Rams are the Rams. And I mean,
the only thing I can see about that Bears game, that honestly, the only thing, I think it's a win for us, but the only thing that scares me about that game is it's in December.
In Chicago.
In Chicago, I see a Snow Bowl. It's all ground game, and probably massive amount of injuries coming out of that game if there's snow, because around that time of year, it is open, right? It's an open stadium, so
it is. I do love a good snow game, though.
Yeah, that's what I see. But we do have a great running game. I think we have a good.
Yes.
We have 2 good running backs. We're finally, I think, after years of turmoil within that space, once we lost the beast, I think coming back, we finally have something to look forward to, where we're like, okay, we have, as long as barring injuries, we have a solid running game finally again.
Yeah, no question. And I mean, especially when you think of how they address the interior of the offensive line, if they can keep these guys from getting hit behind the line of scrimmage as much as they were last year, it'll be a huge difference. Because I mean, that was the biggest thing last year, is the running game never really got going because your first contact was 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. So
even if you shed that first tackle, you're making it back to the line to gain. Like, that's not great. So
true.
Can you see that thing? Oh, you can't. Okay.
Oh, no.
I got some weird little flying creature.
Oh, as long as it's not one of
Uh,
them Joro spiders.
what's that?
Well, I said as long as it's not one of them Joro spiders that are infesting the East Coast now.
Oh yeah, no spiders, no spiders. No, just some weird little flying creature came through. Just out of reach though. I couldn't
Couldn't get a good smack on it.
couldn't get it smacked down. Um, so they did restructure a couple of contracts, which is awesome.
Yep.
Draymond Jones, one of them, frees
So
up 7.5.
yeah, 7.5 million. That's great.
Yeah.
We're going to need that because I think were we technically over anyway at some point?
No, we were. So we didn't have to restructure, but I think what it's going to allow them to do is because I mean, free agency is still a thing, right? So as you get through camp and OTAs and all of that, if someone comes available, especially because there are free agents that are still around, right? That aren't on a team yet. So all of a sudden you could look at a guy like if one of these safeties that they brought in isn't showing out, Quandre Diggs is still floating around out there.
True.
So, you might be able to bring him back in because although he still has a cap hit here, you could probably pick him up relatively cheap being as he hasn't landed on a roster. I know they've also been kicking the tires on the idea of bringing Jamal Adams back. Now, I don't think they should do that. He's been injured the whole time. But again, these are guys that if you free up a little bit of space, you could potentially bring those guys back in. On paper, it doesn't look great because the cap hit is ridiculous. But,
yeah,
if you can get some talent on the field, I'd never rule it out.
Yeah. So, yes, I saw. So it was 7.5 million for Draymond. Who else did they do?
So it sounded like they redid part of DK's, but I didn't see the detail of it. Okay. So yeah, unfortunately, I didn't see the detail of it as what was restructured, but there was a restructure of some sort. So I think what it did was just move money off of this year into next year, which makes them incredibly expensive next year. But if it's freeing up a little bit of cap space this year, maybe they have their eye on somebody that they want to bring in.
Oh, that's true.
That's my guess. Because otherwise,
have there been? I haven't heard in any rumor mill about who we've been really looking at. So
me either. But I find it interesting that they're doing these restructures to free up space.
Yeah.
So even though they haven't necessarily came out and made any statements, which I mean, I guess if you're targeting somebody, you wouldn't, because you wouldn't want somebody else to snatch them up. But otherwise, why would you do it? Right?
True.
Take the cap hit today. If you don't have people on your target anyway, take the cap hit today, because then next year it's easier. Cap goes up. You've already done the bulk of whatever contract you're talking about. But in this case, they're restructuring stuff off for next season. That makes me think that there is someone on their horizon that they're thinking about.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, honestly, see who they're going to bring in if we do. So,
I mean, I think it has to be on defense, right?
Yeah. I don't see one other offensive, we don't need any more weapons on the offense to me in that sense. So, yeah, I would think it's on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah,
because I mean, when you're thinking of all your receivers, right? I mean, unless they're targeting a tight end, maybe. But if you're thinking of receivers, you got DK and Lockett and JSN and Bobo and Eskridge. And I mean, who would you even be bringing in? You're talking about a sixth option now. So, that doesn't make any sense. A tight end, maybe, right? If there was a high end tight end that was available, I don't recall there being any still floating around, though.
No, and I think they would, they're going to give Fant his opportunity this year, I think. So that's where I'm at with that one. I think you froze, buddy.
Oh, it's not. Yep. Certainly froze. So I don't think it would pull away from Fant at all. I think what it would be is this offense may run more dual tight end sets.
Got you.
And so you may want to have a guy that is if there was a really good blocking tight end out there, I could see them making that a target.
That makes sense. No, that does make sense. But again, like you said, I don't even know who's available in that sense.
Yeah,
would even be that expensive.
That's the thing, right? Especially because I don't know what they got out of DK's deal as far as they moved money, but I don't know how much. But say they got 3, which seems low, but say it was that. Now you have $10 million to play around with. I mean, you can get a dude for 10.
Yeah.
Right. At tight end. Like, I mean, you're not getting a Kelsey or something like that, but I mean, you can get a solid tight end for 10 mil on a 1-year deal.
Yeah. No, that's true.
But again, I don't see it being an offensive guy.
No, probably on defense, like you said. Who knows? Maybe they are looking at, like you said, Adams or what's his name? Diggs, Diggs, in a sense. Maybe that is what they're looking at and making up room. Maybe get them cheaping up both of them. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to demand, but I don't see if they haven't gotten picked up yet. They probably don't have much bargaining power at this point, I think.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. I mean, I only threw those 2 guys out there because they were Seahawks before, right? But at the same time, as I recall, there's 6 safeties on this roster already.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you need Diggs? No. Maybe not. He's a Pro Bowl caliber guy. He's been to 3 of them, I think. And then Jamal Adams, supreme talent, but can't stay healthy. So are either one of those guys, like, whose position would they take? They probably wouldn't be starters, right? No. So, is that something they want? Or like, if say you were Diggs, are you coming in to be a backup, or are you going to sit out and wait for a team that needs you because someone got hurt?
Mm-hmm. I think Diggs is a sit and wait kind of guy.
You would think so.
Time for be a backup.
No, it'd be tough to imagine Jamal Adams doing that either.
Yeah.
Right.
But we should, because he's lucky to get any deal.
Absolutely, especially because he's not a safety.
Exactly.
Dude is a linebacker that pretends he's a safety.
Yeah.
Because if you use him as a safety, you're going to get torched all day because he is terrible in coverage.
Yeah.
He is a blitzing linebacker. That's what he's good at. If you can use him in that way, awesome. But otherwise, he's really kind of a liability because he doesn't track the ball well. He doesn't break on plays extraordinarily well. But if you have him getting after the quarterback, he's good at that. And he can stop the run. Like, he's a big enough dude that he can stop the run. But you almost have to use a 4-3 or a 3-4 system and have him as an extra outside linebacker, even though on paper he's a safety, right? Yeah. He's a rover, essentially. He's just like free to roam around and go after whoever has the ball. But yeah, I mean, if you need him to actually track the play, man.
That's where he becomes overpaid.
No question. Yeah. Yeah. I think if he just made the full-on switch to linebacker, someone would pick him up.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So let's actually, I did want to hit on Ryan Grubb. They did interview him the other day, and they asked him how it was guys were picking up the offense, what kind of percentage of the playbook has really been introduced, and he seemed pretty comfortable with where everybody was at. He said he liked the progression. They haven't gotten that far into the playbook, roughly about 20% of the installation, which honestly, that actually seems pretty decent overall. But, so it'll be interesting to see how much of that is retained between the end of this kind of OTA mini camp time. And then, they get that, 6-7 weeks off before they come back in. Now they do have their playbooks and stuff. So, I mean, in theory, they should be studying. Whether or not they do.
Yeah, no, that's true. and they even got an extra day, right? Because then we even ended a day early. They ended camp a day early, I think, too.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So they gave him an extra day in a sense.
Huh. Well, I mean, was that because we wanted to, or did we do the normal? We had too much contact and we lost a day, because that's usually how we end early. Is there's too much contact and and then we get fined and lose a day of OTAs. Like that's usually how it works. At least that's how it did almost every year with Pete Carroll.
Yeah, yeah. No, I just had heard that. And then I actually, speaking of Pete, I did want to ask you. I had read about we had our first like joint practice with what was it, Tennessee?
Yeah,
Uh,
well, we're going to, yeah.
Yeah, or we're going to something that Pete's always been a no on.
Yeah,
And
we've never done
yeah,
the joint practice.
do you like that? I mean,
I
would
do.
you follow Pete's mantra, or you like the concept?
No, I like the concept, and why I like it is because of how little hitting is allowed in preseason and camp at this point. So it at least gives you somewhat of a live rep that you don't get going against yourself. You know, you don't get that same aggressiveness that you do going against another team. It's why I don't like that you're getting rid of preseason games. It's why we keep seeing such horrible gameplay week 1, week 2, week 3 of the regular season, because none of the starters are in preseason and you're not allowed to hit in preseason anymore. Right? As soon as you're in OTAs and camp and all of that, your starters are taking, it's like 7-on-7 drills, or, they got a helmet on, but no pads. It's like patty cake time out there. And so their ability to actually hit and do real reps is limited to, half a dozen days through the entirety of camp, which that does not get you ready for the season. Mm-hmm. So then you move into what is now 3 preseason games, and a lot of teams didn't have starters in them at all. So your first live reps are week 1. So I do like the joint practices because it at least gives you some sort of scrimmage in real time. And it does happen, during a time where you're evaluating talent still too, which is one of the other problems with getting rid of preseason games, is now you only have 3 looks at some of these guys that are trying to make roster spots. So I do like the joint practices though.
I mean, I guess because I not having seen one for so long, especially under the Pete regime, at that point, what do you think the concerns were? I mean, that somewhat are now alleviated in a sense, because obviously if we're going to do it, there, whatever concerns were previously, because that's what I'm just trying to figure out is, what were the big concerns then that we would never do it? I mean, is it giving away plays or injury?
No, there's usually not enough. Like, it's all base stuff when you're doing that. You're not showing anything at all. It's similar to preseason, right? You're not bringing out any wrinkles of your playbook. Like, you're running the most vanilla stuff out there because you're evaluating talent. You're just trying to make sure that people are good at the basics. I think one of the things with the Pete Carroll era is we still had 4 preseason games. So you didn't have as much of an emphasis on it. You were also still allowed to hit a little more in practices, especially when he first got to Seattle, right? Now, we still got in trouble all the time for too much hitting, but at least during that era, you still had the 4 preseason games, so lots of time to evaluate. He was also one that would use his starters in preseason games because he wanted live reps. So if you're going to use the guys in that way, then this joint practice doesn't make as much sense.
Yeah.
But now that they are limiting how much you can hit, they're limiting how many games you have. Now you kind of fill this in as, sort of an extra week 1 of preseason type of situation, because it's going to be mostly backups. You're going to have your starters run, a little bit of it, but for the most part, you're going to be using that as an extra week 1 preseason type of thing. So I think that's probably why he shied away from it. But I think if he were to do it today, he'd probably also be more open to it, just because of the lack of amount of reps you get.
Got you.
But I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm curious if that's going to happen here, if it's going to happen down there.
That I hadn't read. So yeah, I just knew that they were going to do it. So it'd be kind of cool if they had it here. I have a feeling it'll probably be in Tennessee, but that's fine.
I would imagine. But
I think Tennessee and probably, I don't know what their training facility or what their facilities are like down there compared to ours. I know we have a decent one, but it might
the VMAX. Yeah, the VMAX nice.
Okay. Never been there. So
yeah, no, like if you were going to do if you were going to do it, the VMAC is big enough they could do it. That being said, I would bet that they do it down there.
That's my call.
But so we did get an interesting ranking that I thought was funny on one of our safeties, Julian Love, right? They had him listed as the 28th safety out of 32.
Ooh. I don't know if I agree with that.
Not at all.
Oh.
This is Pro Football Focus, and let's be honest, half the time
Oh.
I feel like they get it wildly wrong.
Yeah.
But that being said,
Oh, so
28th out of 32?
Yeah.
And if that were the case, why did you get rid of Diggs?
No, exactly. Because we already know Diggs is better than 28. So you wouldn't have gotten rid of something to go downward. So yeah.
No, well, and Julian Love, I mean, he was a Pro Bowl safety also.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you can be in the Pro Bowl. How can you be in the Pro Bowl and then at the same time be listed 28th?
Yeah. Well, where would you put him? Would you put him in the top? I don't know about top 10, or would you put him in like that middle 10 through 20, or where would you put him?
Yeah, I'd have him in the. I would have him in the middle third. I'd probably have him at like, I don't know, 12th, 13th, somewhere around in there is probably about where he would land.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that that's necessarily all on him or the fact that our defense was just atrocious in the middle. And some of the things that gets credited to him weren't necessarily his fault. But,
True.
you know, stats are stats, right? So, but when you think of our defense last year, you couldn't stop anything in the middle.
Nope.
Whether it was a running play or if it was a slant, if you had any kind of seam routes, the linebackers couldn't cover. And so as a safety, you're giving up plays because the guys in front of you weren't able to do their job. Mm-hmm. So you're getting stats put up against you that are in your zone because now you're trying to cover two guys because your outside linebacker didn't get an arm on him and bump him off a route or slow him down or whatever. So now you have, you know, a receiver that came over. You're obviously that safety. So there's no one above you. So you got to fade back. Now your seam routes underneath you. Both those guys are in your zone. You're one guy, right? That is a completed catch on your stat chart.
Yeah.
Not really your fault though.
No, not really your fault, but you know, like you said, stats are stats.
Exactly.
You know, I like Love, and I'll be honest with you, on my fantasy team, one of my fantasy teams last year, I carried him on as a defensive player.
Sure.
You know, I brought him in and carried him for a while there. So, you know,
I mean, he made a lot of tackles.
Yeah. He was,
because no one else was.
Yeah, I know. He didn't mind hitting.
No, I mean, right? When you looked at our team, the only guys that were actually tackling people was Bobby Wagner, Julian Love.
Yeah.
I mean, Woolen got benched twice for not tackling people.
Yeah.
And Witherspoon, you know, as much as I like Witherspoon and he wanted the contact, the problem was he didn't always get you down.
Yeah.
So he'd make the contact, but it wasn't like a wrap-up contact. It was a shoulder throw. Yeah. And if it didn't knock you over or push you out of bounds, you were still up and running. So he didn't shy away from the contact, but it was the let's get some arms around people.
He's not a finisher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of no one is, though. Like when you look around the league, it's a lot of guys throwing a shoulder at somebody and hoping it works. That's why you saw so many, you know, yards after contact. It's like, well, yeah, but it's kind of like not real contact. Now, yards after contact for me are someone tried to wrap you up. You broke the tackle, not you got bumped into. That's yards after contact. But that's just not what the league is anymore. It's just throw a shoulder, try and get that Sports Center hit, and then, you know, keep it pushing, I guess.
I touched you. That's contact.
Yeah, right. It's probably almost a flag, honestly, but I looked at your helmet. Bam.
I know the refs these days. You never know.
It's rough. It's rough. I don't enjoy the way the games are being called at this point. No. So we had questions brought into us. It's a section that I do at the during every show, and basically those of you watching, you get a dictate where the show goes. So the second half of the show, I typically dedicate to questions that are sent in on various platforms. So whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube, however the questions come in, those are the ones that we, bring onto the show the next week, or at least as many as we can. Sometimes we run out of time, especially during the season when, there's a lot more to talk about as far as the games. But so one that's come up a lot is, because I have how to say this? I don't have a problem with DK, but I have a problem with some of the things he does. Right. And so I've come out, during this last season, as far as, they should probably trade him. They can get a lot in trade value. They have plenty of other weapons, so I make the case for it in that way. Not that I necessarily want him off the team or anything like that. Phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
But
I will agree with you. He does get one. He can't seem to make easy catches, but he makes but he can make if you throw it to the numbers, he's going to drop it. Throw it up here, he's catching it, right?
It's for sure. Yeah. It could be like one-handed out the side of Yeah.
Yeah. And,
perfect.
He's got those like, I can catch amazing. It's almost like if it's too easy, he doesn't know what to do.
He's like, no.
And he is big. His penalties, while I think the problem with his penalties are their emotional penalties. It's not his play that's bad. It's his emotions. And, no matter how much you want to be that fired up, sometimes, you got to understand your emotions can hurt the team. Like you just gave a, a penalty in a sense that we were right in the red zone. And now we're like, 40 yards back because you had to have an outburst or do something stupid that, doesn't need to be an emotional outburst. So I think that's the thing. So I can understand the desire to want to trade somebody like that, right? Obviously your penalties aren't like true penalties. They're you're being an idiot penalties. And if you're going to be an idiot too much, and
that's worse than in-game penalties, right?
Yeah.
That's after the whistle. Now you throw a guy to the ground. Like, what is the point of that?
Yeah. And especially a lot of times his penalties seem to always come in big moments when we need these things, we need the play to work. Like it's not, it was a 4th down and we went for it, or, it was a 3rd and 1. And now all of a sudden we're punting because you had to have this emotional outburst. Like he seems to do it in those moments where it's like, oh, we actually need it. I wouldn't care as much if it was like, well, the game was out of our hands, whether we were blowing them out or getting blown out. So, I could see some frustration there, penalty's not going to hurt us. We're down by 50 or up by 50, like not that much, but where it's that care. But when you're doing it in pressure moments and pressure situations and big moments, you're screwing up the whole team in that sense too. So I understand that vibe, but I think what I'm hoping is while Pete was cool, I think Pete had that like friendship mentality with his players. And so I think they felt like they could probably get away with it a little bit more. And, I don't know what Pete was behind the scenes, but how tough he was as an individual, because I feel like if you did that to Bill Parcells would be taking you in the back room and smack you around a little bit,
He was that guy that would grab your helmet and beat you on the top with the whistle.
That dude. I'm hoping maybe some of these new coaches, they will actually hopefully work with him with his emotions, and maybe he'll have a different aspect or vibe coming in. And if it has to be a different fear, like, hey, we'll trade you to Carolina. They can use anybody they can get. You want to go to Carolina? Right. So don't.
That's right. We will trade you to Burgermaster.
So like, hey, listen, you might want to like, pepper up there. You're not under Pete's protection anymore. And I think that's what a lot of these players hopefully are going to play with this year is you are not under Pete's protection. This is a new coach. He is looking to build his team, his way, his version. You do not have the same leeway as you probably did with, an established Pete, because anything you do that made Pete look bad, it was still Pete. Anything you do to make Rob look bad on his first year, it's, hey, this coach can't control his player,
exactly.
Is this the next Nathaniel Hackett? Right. Kind of.
Well, and that's the thing that's troublesome with DK is if you look at it, he's actually had more of those penalties every year he's been in the league. So he's actually gotten worse at it. So it's not even like it was his rookie year was a problem, but he's matured. He's actually gone the opposite direction. And so that's a little bit worrisome. New system. So yeah, who knows? But like one of the games that really came to mind last year was when we were playing the Bengals, a game we easily could have won.
Yes.
We were in the red zone. It was a pivotal play. He throws their corner to the ground after the whistle. 15-yard penalty. We're out of scoring range now. And, we end up losing that game. Now, did we lose it because of that play? Of course not. But it certainly doesn't help, right? Like when you have drive killers, you only get so many drives during a game.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't have those. And when he has one every other game during the season, that's rough. That's a hard thing to overcome, especially when you're playing good teams. So, to get to what their question was, is if DK balls out this year, do the Hawks pay him? Because after this year, next year is his last year on the contract he has now.
Yeah.
And this is why, again, I think there's an opportunity to move on because you'd get a lot for him. And there's no way they're giving him Justin Jefferson money. There's just
and he hasn't earned Justin Jefferson money. I'm gonna be honest. I mean, he's good. He's a great athlete, but he is not Justin Jefferson. I would not be wanting to pay him or even CeeDee Lamb at this point, right? I'm not gonna try to pay him that much money.
Except when you talk about how he is as a dynamic receiver, you do have him in that same breath of a Waddle, a Jamar Chase. Maybe he's not a CD or Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill, but he is that, 1B guy, right? Like he's not the first, the top 3 guys, but he's probably a top 5 or 6, certainly within the top 10. So all of a sudden, the way that contracts go, right? I mean, we just saw Trevor Lawrence get $55 million a year. We haven't seen him actually do anything yet.
No.
So
no, exactly.
When you think of the way the contracts are going and what he got this last time through, it's going to be the next time is going to be more than what he already got.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what did he get last time? Like 44 mil, something like that. So, I mean, it was money.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I find it hard to believe that you pay for that guy. So then all of a sudden that trade value really comes back in where you're like, okay, well, do we trade him? He's going to play for us this year. It would seem, but I could see them moving off him at the end of this year.
Oh, I think so too. I can agree with you on that. This year he's on the team.
Yeah.
Next year, honestly, I don't think he is. I will agree with you because, well, the big factors will be, we know probably Lockett won't be back next year. I have a feeling Lockett's probably on his way out the door. But if JSN, if Bobo comes up, I mean, I'm not a faith in Eskridge. I forgot he was even on the team at this point. I know how big he was, right? I know how big he was, but when we got him and what he was supposed to be, but he was supposed to be, never was kind of guy,
Well, I mean, Eskridge is good as like a slot guy.
Injury.
I mean, like as a slot guy, he's cool. Yeah. He's not that. He's not an X or Y, right? Like he's not he's not your outside guys. No. But as a slot guy or as a fourth receiver kind of situation, he can create separation. Yeah. So I do like him in that way. But yeah, I mean, to your point, he's not that number one guy.
Yeah, and it's not just the receiving core. Like you have to really think too, is if we're going to pay that kind of money, how are we going to stock, the rest of the other positions that we do need to fill? Like, how are we going to fill up a quarterback position if Sam Howell is not the next Geno and moving on and supposed to take over the reins? If we have to go pay big money there.
Well, so and you have a lot of defense that's all on 1-year contracts, so you're going to have to pay them still.
I think it's more about he could be. He might just have to be the cap hit. Like he might have to, be one of those situations where it's like, we're not going to be able to pay you this kind of money and still field the team we want. So, but we can field the team with what we'll save from getting rid of you. Plus, like you said, if we can get if you can get 2 first-round picks or something for him, I mean, I'd take that at this point. We can use depending on where the pick is. If it's
Yep.
in the top half, yes. If it's in the bottom half, maybe not. I don't know. But I could see a good case for moving on from him. Now if he balls out, but does he ball out this year? Is the offense? We don't even know what the offense is really going to look like. If it's designed for him to ball out, or if it is
So
more designed to spread the ball around to the
so we
point
do
where
kind of know because we watched Grubb at UW.
true.
So I mean that is an offense that likes to throw the ball, and they have the weapons to throw the ball. And Geno is very accurate.
Mhm.
Whether you love Geno or not, he is a very accurate quarterback.
So in your case, balling out, then would that be? So we need to have like a minimum of 1,000 yards,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I mean, so
We're
but
talking like
1,000 yards,
10
a
TDs
thousand
or
yards
more.
isn't impressive anymore.
No, but that's why it's like the floor, right? Anything under 1,000 yards for the season is, the 1,000 yard is like that floor mark. Like, okay, once you cross that threshold, then we'll start considering you. And then,
I feel like it kind of has to elevate, right? Because now we have another regular season game. I mean, 1,000 yards, what is that? Like 58 yards a game or something like that's really not impressive. So, I think at this point, your floor has to start at like 1,200 yards.
1,200. Okay. So a
Yeah.
1,200 yard floor. So if he gets 1,200 yards, and then what would you put at TDs? Like 10 as a benchmark?
Yeah, 10 to 12, right? As a basement number, because, that really depends on where it is you are on the field. Like if he gets a big play and it goes down to the 3 and it's a running play that gets it in, I mean, that doesn't go on his stat chart, but I mean, his yardage is what got that score there. So, I mean, touchdown numbers don't really necessarily mean a ton. I mean, if you remember back to when Luke Wilson had a bunch of them, right? That wasn't because he was carrying the load down the field. He just happened to be open in the end zone, So,
and then what would you put your market at the receptions? Like 100 receptions, 90?
You got to have at least that.
At least 100.
Yeah, you got to have at least that. Because if you're going to be asking big money, like you got to have a stat sheet that follows that. So now, again, I think this offense is going to lean more that direction based on what Grubb, has done throughout his career. And oddly enough, that actually kind of goes into the next question that was sent to us. And that was, does PJ Walker make an impact? And I hope not. Because that means a lot
PJ
of
Walker on the impact, we're going for the number 1 pick this year.
100%. Because if PJ Walker is making the impact, there's a lot of things that went wrong. And most of it is the first 2 quarterbacks got severely hurt.
Yeah.
So let's hope that PJ Walker is a non-factor. I do like him as our third because he absolutely can come in and, ball out. But let's hope we never see him on the field.
Yeah, I'm agree with that.
So there is that. Okay, we got with so many weapons on offense, who breaks out and who falls off. I feel like this one is probably the easiest one to talk about, and that is JSN will probably have his breakout. He had a nice season last year. I think he's going to take that step forward, and Lockett is probably the one that's going to take the step back.
Yeah, I would agree on that one. I think Lockett's there as a safety net. You know what I mean? But I think this is JSN's year to kind of take that next step, next level. But I would almost argue on the breakout player, JSN, yes. But I'm a big fan of Fant, and if we actually feature a tight end,
yes,
this is a tight end who can have 1,000+ yards, who can have a 1,200 yard season if we're utilizing him correctly. So to me, if utilized properly, I think he would be a bigger breakout than JSN, only because we've seen good things from JSN already.
Yeah.
And of course, JSN is going to finally succeed in the position as it's kind of like the Tyler shift, whereas Fant, there's just nobody's ever really,
they got rid of everyone.
Carlson, I think, was like the last time I can think of like any tight end that made such a huge impact for us. I mean, I don't even think Jimmy Graham was great his 1 year with us.
Well, we didn't use him right. We tried to use him as a blocking tight end. I mean. He's not.
So no. So yeah, Jimmy Glass, no.
Yeah. No, exactly.
But so Fant, I think to me, my expectation is to see really big things out of Fant, and
Yep.
That would be my breakout player.
Yeah. So that is, I was a coin flip between the two, because this offense should utilize tight ends way more. And it's not like Gino's opposed to throwing to him.
Mm-mm.
I mean, last year he didn't have the opportunity because they were essentially linemen. But, this coming year, in theory, he should be able to have some outlet players, and Fant's that guy. So, yeah, no, I'm right there with you. For me, if it wasn't JSN, it was going to be Fant.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we got. This is one of my favorite sections because it's always interesting to see some of the questions that come through. This one made me laugh because I have sent some emails to try and make it happen, but I haven't received anything back yet. But will I ever have Pete Carroll on the show? And I think that would be really interesting, especially now, because he's still technically part of the Seahawk organization.
Mm-hmm.
So if I will, I don't know. Have I been trying? Absolutely.
Does Coach Bono have a connection? Maybe.
I don't know if
Get
he
him on
does.
Coach's
Here in
Corner.
Seattle.
Might be able to get him on Coach's Corner too.
I may have to reach out to him and see if potentially he does, because I think that would be pretty cool, especially because I'm curious how it is. What's that even like in the building now, right? Because he's still technically part of the team. Curious what it is that looks like. Let's see. What am I looking? What's that?
I said it could be touchy.
No, 100%. Make for great TV, right? So let's see. What are we looking for the most growth out of this team? And for me, it's tackling.
Yes.
That is
tackling.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't even a second thought that popped in my head. As soon as that question popped up, I was like, yeah, I want to see us tackle people.
Yeah.
Like, actually put arms around other humans and take them to the ground. That's what I want to see, because we have not seen much of that.
No, I mean, like, we saw players getting benched, like you said, benched for not doing it. So at that point, there's a problem. So
Exactly.
yeah, get out there and actually tackle folks. That would be great for us fans as well, to see some good hits.
Yeah, I mean, even if they're not awesome hits, let's just make a play.
Yeah, sure.
Let's not have them hit 3 guys and still be running.
Yeah. Remember, it's a game of inches.
Yeah, right? Let's not give up 15 yards because we decided not to put an arm around someone. So, yes, tackling, hands down, better be the biggest growth of this team week 1. I mean, this can't be it's an evolving thing. It's like, no, you better learn how to tackle like now.
Yeah. No, I agree.
All right. So then let's see. The last question we got time for here is how was coaching at the Tyler Lockett thing? Yeah, so that it was fun. It was fun. It was hurting cats for sure because the age groups were from what was it? It was I want to say it was like I think it was 4th grade through 8th grade, I think is what it was.
Oh yeah.
So wide range. Obviously, they were broke up into groups. Right. You didn't have 8th graders beating up on little kids, but it was pretty fun. It was a very hectic day. It's a very fast pace. You're running around a lot. You did some drills. There were giveaways for the kids. There was photo ops, stuff like that. And then there were 3 different scrimmage games. And so, I mean, it was a very fast paced, like you were moving all day. So it made it a lot of fun. The weather, participated. It was like almost an 80-degree day. So it was, you couldn't ask for a better situation. And then the second part of it was he as nice as he seems? He was running around nonstop. So we didn't really get to have a conversation. Got to say hi. And that was kind of it. So, because there were 16 of us coaches that all had our own groups of kids, and he had to make the rounds to all of those. It was, it was an event. There's no doubt.
With your group of kids, did you send any home with, like, in some worlds we call it the aha moment, where they were just like, oh my goodness, I learned something great today from coach, like, did you get a vibe from that, or was it just...
So not really, because there was so much movement. You didn't really get break down too much. So even when we were doing drills, you only had the kids because they were kind of cycling through. You only had them for, I think it was like, it's like 10 or 12 minutes. Like that was it. So you didn't even really get very far in, but yeah, so it was fun. I would definitely do it again. I might actually do the Kenneth Walker one this month. So I'll let you know. That being said, there are a few things that I'm giving away here. So these are Tyler Lockett signed event cards. I have 3 of them. And so basically when I hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, I'm going to give one away to the list of subscribers there. When I hit 1,000 followers on TikTok, I'm going to give one of them away there. And then on Twitter, when I hit 12,000, I'll give one of them away to the people following me there. So there's 3 of them that you can get. And so that's kind of how you can get those. Other than that brings us to the top of the hour. Hour goes super quick.
Yeah, no, it always goes good when you're talking football, right? You know,
absolutely. And they're finally on the field. Like you're just like, here we go. We got football. Let's do this.
One day closer.
Absolutely. So if you are watching here on Roku, stay tuned for the next hour. Of course, if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Hitting that subscribe button is a huge help to all of us content creators. And of course, enjoy the rest of your weekend. See you next Friday.
Go Hawks.